Well, thank you for your participation. Good afternoon. My name is Franklin Herbas. I work for SAP, part of the Platform Strategy Group. I consider a privilege to give a talk to a development community. I mean, after all, when you think about it, you are the ones that actually build, control those pieces of information that are actually changing our lives. Depending on the conference that you will participate, you will hear that today we are in a way in the midst of a number of revolutions. If you were to go into one of the conferences, you will hear a revolution on gaming, a real-time revolution, big data, mobile, social media revolution. And among all of that movement that is quite significant for a development community, certainly you're in the middle of it. Developers more than ever right now are the main focus for many companies. And in a way, just like we have seen it maybe in some other time during the .com are the kings of this new era. Now, what I would like to do in the next 45 minutes is actually drill down a little bit more on this topic. I would also like to discuss how developers, once linked or once these developers start leveraging the right platform, can actually address some of the most challenging business challenges that industries are experiencing today. Developing applications that we have never seen before. I would like to tell you and touch on some points, some suggestions when you are evaluating platforms as a service. What are the areas that you should pay close attention when you are exploring platform as a service? Some of the most innovative technologies, such as in-memory technology, being able to handle big data on a high-performing way for you to address some of the business challenges of industries today. So with that in mind, let me first step back and give you an introduction of back in 2003, an article came up by the Harvard Business Review, Nicholas Carr, an article titled "It Doesn't Matter." You have to look back and see what really happened during this time in 2003, 2004. Innovation technology was fundamental for companies. This is the time where companies start investing not only in hardware but in software in order for them to have a competitive advantage. Very often during this time, if you were to ask chief operating officers, they will clearly state and publicly will state that information technology is fundamental for them to increase their value, that IT was fundamental for them to have a competitive edge. During this time is where IT was, in a way, put as an analogy and linked to some of the activity that happened during the railroad times, or when electric engines, generators first came in. Innovations that change how industry and reshape industries for the last 2 centuries. And even until now, I will say that stays true, because IT is bringing that differentiating value for many companies. So during this time, you have all of this movement from companies saying, we want a competitive edge, we want to differentiate ourselves, and therefore investing on it and paying close attention to information technology. Now, when this article comes, what happens on the outer states is that this increased availability of technology actually made the IT costs decrease, and the point of Nicholas Carr was that many of these technology became a commodity. So therefore, because of cost came down, this strategic stand approach did not matter anymore, and therefore the title of his article, that IT does not matter anymore. There are references on this article where he quotes where he mentions and says that IT management will be, in a way, a boring activity, that they should pay close attention to the operating risks and very little to the increase of new opportunities, right? So So you have that perception that is taking place back in 2003, 2004, and then not long ago, Mark Anderson, I believe on a Wire Wire magazine interview, he states that software will lead the world. In that interview, some of the reference that he makes is because we do have the mobile devices in our hands, knowing that the bandwidth capabilities are increasing, it is expected that development of the future applications will be done on the cloud, taking advantage of the computational power and the high-performing memory storage that cloud offerings offer today. He made key points in regards of how digital companies are actually changing the shape of how industries behave. He made references of how Craigslist actually changed the newspaper industry, how for every $1 million that Craigslist of Craigslist revenue, $1 billion was taken from the newspaper industry. He made references of how Amazon had the effects on borders, for example. So what really happened between these two times? What are for the perception to change so radically? Moving bits to atoms has been the motto for the internet age, right? It was first, it was brought up by, I believe, his name was Nicholas Montenegro, I believe. Anyway, what he accomplished in a publication back in 1995, a bestseller in 1995, I think the book was called Being Analytical. What he stressed is that the future innovation and future fortunes where IT is leading will be made by innovating on these bits of information on that computing power, right? Moving from physical, like let's say books, to digitally, or by leveraging that bit of information, companies will become quite successful and will make a big fortune. This is in 1995. And certainly that stays hold until today. Actually, today, that statement is more true than ever, because we have seen how companies, some of the most precious assets of companies are actually those bits of information. We have seen how companies have taken mathematical intelligence, algorithms, and have turned it into bits and make those precious assets the fundamental driving force of those companies. So we see that activity. We also see, and by the way, this differentiation between fixed assets or atoms, as we call it, and bits is becoming more or less of one or the other, but rather of a marriage. What we are seeing right now on cloud computing, we see software tailored for a hardware. Same thing we see in mobile, being able to build software, control software that is tailored to a specific hardware. So that is becoming less apparent that you have either atoms or bits, but rather a marriage of both. And certainly the explosion of data. One of the most fundamental changes that takes place during this time is the explosion of high volumes of data. I mean, we have what we've been experiencing in SAP is you have these companies with vast amounts of information that I believe some of them are dealing with terabytes of information, exabytes. I believe it is expected that on 2014, we'll be dealing with 3.5 zettabytes of global data. Unprecedented numbers, right? But at the end, we are facing companies, we are dealing with companies that do not know how to manage these vast amounts of information that are a composition of transactional data, raw data, social data, right? Being able not only to build analytics on top of it, but being able just to manage that information, being able to slice and dice it to provide the answers that the operation departments need or the decision makers demand. Certainly with those two movements, Stephen O'Grady nails it right on the head on 2012. I believe an analyst from Red Monk, where he states that developers are the new kingmakers. And that certainly holds true. On that book, you will find references of how developers play a strategic role in the success of a company. That the most fundamental and essential piece of a company is a development strategy. You find reference with anecdotes, statistics, and a number of other. It paints us the picture that the ones that actually make or break a company are actually the developers. That not managers, but rather developers are the breakers of a company, are the key fundamental piece for a company to be successful. Something that is actually backed up by companies that are going out in the statements that says there is no company that, I've seen statements from a number of companies where that pretty much make a reference of no one spends or pays more attention than us in regards of getting the best people on board. So with that in mind, I would like to talk of two different innovations that really take place during this time. Back in 2005 with Amazon Web Service, you can see from and all of this from the developer perspective, obviously, you can see from this innovation, from the cloud offering, you see the ability for developers now to be able to have in their hands a runtime scalable solution with enough elasticity to build solutions that before we couldn't be done, right? Being able to approach business problems that demand very complex programming models. With that movement, you see a number of activity. I mean, you're talking about not only leveraging the computational power, but also the onboarding of development into the cloud offering. What does that mean? I worked in a number of companies where friends of mine, after we were done development, and I'm sure you're still dealing with this, their whole role was to be able to take this development code that we have done, to integrate it, test it, and deploy it before the next development cycle will actually start, meaning before we actually come back in the morning. I've worked in a company where the assembly team, that's what the label of this team was, to come at some time at 5 o'clock in the afternoon when we are leaving the company, being able to take all the code that we have done, start the batch process to not only redeploy for it to be usable again for when we will come in the morning. I've seen this in a couple of companies. Now, I am not saying that some of the testing techniques, some of the integration offerings that we have on the developer are changing. Some of that still continues. However, the cloud offerings are certainly making it easier for developers to avoid some of those nuances. It is clear now that developers can conceive building an application and concentrate on how I can actually do the data management of this big data as opposed of worrying about how the batch process at the end of the day will work. Being able to use Hadoop for some of the data set results. They worry less about being able to put a data graph, a massive data graph into an HTTP session because they do know of the cloud offering and the power computing that cloud offering has. So certainly cloud from that point on is getting better and better, making the life of developers easier and allowing companies to solve issues that they've never explored before. Now, mobility, it is nothing new. You're all aware of how mobility has changed the way of how we see applications, especially from a development perspective. For the first time, developers are looking of how we can accomplish things that couldn't done before. For a number of years, we have trained many of our customers that the only way for them to get their analytical data that is based on sometimes on terabytes is for them to wait for a batch to end at the end of the day or weekly. Customers now are very much aware of what is taking place in technology and are demanding for us technology providers and for you to build solutions, mobile solutions, that actually show that data in real time. I'm experiencing and I've been managing a number of projects where one of the key requirements is build a solution where real-time insight into the big data must be done and must be done at my fingertips. It must be displayed on a mobile device. So the challenge here for developers is how do I actually correlate these vast amounts of information and streamline to a mobile device? I'll touch much more in detail in a couple of slides. So where developers are today more important than ever. If you think about it, you are the ones that are actually taking, like the example I just gave, taking mathematical intelligence algorithms and turn those into bits, into software. You are the ones that are taking code, building code snippets, or you're actually building the code of behavior by taking all the click-through, all the sites that we are visiting, all the search that we are doing, taking all that behavior, all of our interactivity with the software, and turning that behavior into bits. You are actually building social graphs based on my interaction with social media sites such as like Facebook or Twitter, or by my interaction with my mobile device, right? You are the ones that are actually taking, making this possible. So, and that leads to big data. If you think, just to bring this into perspective, some of our customers, just to give you some examples, I am aware of some of the consumer product goods companies. We are experiencing, in particular one project, 5,000 data sets. This is for product care, a company that does product for product care. This company has 5,000 data sets per millisecond, every 33 milliseconds. That means 150,000 data sets per second, 15 billion per day. Another company, one of our telecommunications companies, is generating 12 terabytes per week of the landline phone calls. 12 terabytes per week. We have also in the CPG, one company that has 125,000 orders, transaction orders, people buying. 125,000 orders coming in. From those 125,000, they employ 400 people because from those 125,000, 1,400 of those orders have discrepancies. So they employ 400 people just to solve the order discrepancies. When I talk about vast amounts of information, certainly we are facing, as SAP dealing with big, large companies, certainly we do know the challenges that our companies are facing, right? But the IDC reports, the quotes that I just gave you, it is expected that the global data to go into 35.2 gigabytes of zettabytes. I mean, that is 1 plus 21 zeros of global data. Now, when you look at sensor networks, right? For quite some time, companies such as like utilities, mining, oil and gas have been deploying sensors across the grids, across the telecommunication systems, wherever. These sensors, I have the opportunity to manage a number of these. These sensors are reading sometimes tens, sometimes hundreds of readings, of temperature readings per second. Now, if you look at these sensor networks, you're looking at a number of thousands of sensors deploying into a grid. Now, and a central location where all this information is going. Terabytes of information on a weekly basis going into these central locations for them to make sense out of this raw data, right? Very often, this raw data eventually becomes garbage, right? That is the reality. It is just too much amount. But they're already coming up, knocking the doors in technology providers like us saying, we need to make sense. We need to establish patterns. We need to identify patterns on that raw data because our decision makers need it in order to avoid blockouts, in order to avoid, depending on the scenario. This is the reality today. So that sensor, while at the beginning, these sensor networks were here. I take a sensor starts taking temperature readings, and they're moving to a central location. For that central location to slice and dice and build analytics from that point on. While that was true, where it's moving right now is that you have pieces of code close to nodes, to those sensors, intelligent pieces of code close to those nodes that actually know what each sensor, what kind of data each sensor is monitoring. In other words, those sensor networks are becoming intelligent, right? That there's the concept of a central place where I will move all my data and build analytics from that point on. That is possible only because developers are pushing the boundaries of what sensor networks should mean in the future, pushing the boundaries. Not only that these sensors will, let's say, monitor sensor activity, but maybe even connect to appliances and send us notifications. Now, one of the most desired skills for a number of projects that I'm aware of is being for developers such as like you to be able to understand the APIs from Twitter or Facebook, to bring that unstructured content from those sources and give them a business meaning. Let me give you an example, and that is the part of social. Let me give you an example. I had the opportunity to work in a project where, in order to provide sentiment analysis based on social media, you demand for developers to be able to understand the APIs from these networking sites, be able to monitor and use that data and map it to transactional data in order to give a business meeting. For what reason? In sentiment analysis, you have a company that wants to monitor their brand, or they just release a new product and they want to make sure that that product is as successful as they expected. The first place where a company has issues of a brand or probably a recall product, it is actually on the web. I became aware of some of the scenarios of the companies that we have dealt with. They do know that the first place where consumers are actually, their customers are complaining about their brand or a particular product is actually Facebook, it's actually Twitter. So they have a particular interest to do sentiment analysis on those and monitor for specific patterns, right? So from the developer's perspective, here's a unique skill set, a combination of the enterprise and social media, being able to deal with the APIs of social media, and at the same time, link that to transactional data in order to give them business meaning. In this case, a real-time scenario. Now, in another area, it is expected from you that you will develop applications that are always on. More than ever, there's a requirement that developers that are going to build the next generation of applications will be applications that are always connected, and they will run in a number of devices. These are the expectations from your customers. I know there are expectations from my customers that we will actually deliver applications that are always connected. So here you're dealing to be able to identify the right platform for you to deploy those applications that will give your customers the connectivity that they expect, meaning always connected, and also the flexibility of leveraging whatever device they need. So let me share with you a number of concrete examples. In this case, in the area of new ways of connect to consumers and the topic of real time. What we have implemented for one of our customers is a possibility, and this is a solution from SAP, based on HANA on our platform as a service cloud offering, where you could do personalized trade promotions to individuals, meaning that you go into a retail store and what you will receive on your phone is a promotion personalized for you, that it will be different promotion for the person next to you, for example. What does that mean? How is that possible from the development perspective? It means that companies already have, as a loyal company, you maybe already registered with them, but they already know all the purchases that you're doing through them. They already know all the purchases that you've done to them. Because you're a loyal customer, they might already have some other consumer information. So you have here in one area all the personal information needed, your purchase order, for a company to actually launch a promotion based on what you purchase, specific for you and different from the one that is next to you. They're pushing the limits on this, and they're basically looking into, will this apply for all customers? Why don't we look on our enterprise data into the inventory levels of the particular store where you're walking in, and find out if really this product is having problems being sold, because we might not even have to do a promotion. Being able to, in real time, turn the switch and decide if a trade promotion campaign should be launched to any specific user. Go beyond just giving a trade promotion to a user, but actually make the software intelligent enough to make the decision if the promotion should be given to you. I have seen these not only in retail. I had the opportunity to work on a utility scenario where the plant managers in charge of a grid network, before what they used to have or what they used to experience, responsible of outages. These are decision makers that need to know at any point in time if there's a potential outage on the grid. This is a company in South Africa where these plant managers are walking around the plant with their smart devices. And through their smart devices, when we were approaching them, and the reason why they approach us is through their smart devices, this person, regardless if it was weekend or holidays, every hour had to press the sync button or refresh button to figure out if the grid was behaving as expected. So the requirement was, I want to leverage the sensor information that already exists in the grid, monitoring the temperature readings and outages and so forth. And I want to be alerted when some of the readings are going out of whack. Some of the readings are just not normal, looking for some anomalies, right? This is affecting the day-to-day life of a specific consumer, similar to the retailer, but you have here, similar to retail, but here you're having utilities. What it implies from the development perspective, and just to share some insight with you, it implies that these utilities have SCADA systems with raw data, with vast amounts of information on raw data. They have the social aspect. They have, I'm aware of one oil and gas company that has 3,000 backend systems. 3,000 backend systems with business information, right? When you deal with that type of information, it means that it is all about big data. But from a development perspective, it means that I should be able, not only, first, to connect to those data sources. A platform that will allow you to connect to those data sources. Once you connect to those data sources, replicate those data sources into a high-performing database where you can actually build the right analytics to build the applications that you need. In our scenario, was actually connect to those SCADA systems or to the SCADA systems that are allowed, because how many are utility companies or deal with SCADA systems? See some hands. If you have dealt with them, you know that the SCADA systems are the Bibles of utilities. You don't touch SCADA systems. So they have these intermediary systems where you connect. So what it implies? Our developers have to connect to those systems, correlate, get the hands on that information into an in-memory high-performing storage database, being able to correlate all that information and show it in an analytical way to the hands of the decision maker, in this case, a mobile device. That from the consumer perspective. From the enterprise level, you can think of some of the advances that we are doing on supply chain that also are tied to real time. In here, we have what is taking place in India and the Kirana stores. I see some people shaking their hands in here. We have built a point of sale system that it will allow these stores that are doing everything manual and maybe with a laptop behind the counter. We have given them the possibility to have a point of sale system on a mobile device where they can actually connect to suppliers for them to have the items that they need, right? A very fundamental, just an app on a mobile device for them to run their business more successful and have a chance to the conglomerates such as like Walmart going and moving into India, right? This is a kind of like David Goliath kind of thing. But at least to have the chance for these Kirana stores to have that small competitive edge to still keep their customers. Now, these might be on on a CPG type of scenario, on a retail scenario. One of the projects that I'm aware of is how we have monitored, also on supply chain, how we have monitored the footprint of people walking into a store, because you're aware of all the sensors, all the little beeping, right, when you go into one of those hard brand stores, right? They do know what they call footprint. They do know how many people are in the store at any point in time, right? They call this footprint. They also know the transactions, the purchase orders per day or per minute. They're aware. The systems have that information. They might have, if you're registered with this company, they might have your personal information too, but they certainly know all the transactions go ordered through the register. So they have what they call the conversion rate. They want to know what is the conversion rate from the people going in the store and the transactions being entered in the cash register at any point in time, during the afternoon, during the morning. This conversion rate in retail is used to emphasize the promotion campaigns for a specific gender, right? Because we can identify if it's a female or male. We can identify how many people are in the store, what are the best times in order for people to embrace. So the project in this scenario was also related to bring the enterprise enough information, correlate the information coming from retail stores and make sense out of it. So now the challenges are fascinating, and I can drill down very much in detail for many of this, but I'm going to highlight in a little bit faster way. A couple of weeks ago, there was a conference where Ford went on a stage and said that they were actually going to leverage your smart devices, the applications that you already have on your smart devices, and they have this called the sync technology, or uplink, I believe they call it, where they would actually link the applications and the mobile device that you already have with a media interface to interact with it, to do what, I don't know exactly what, but they announce it, right? What it captured my attention the most on this talk was that they said it, Ford is becoming a developer-centric company. Here you have an automobile company putting an emphasis on a developer-centric type of company, because they will actually open or maybe make available to developers an interface for you to be able to create applications that interact to the once again, bringing the developer at putting the glue together in order to make this possible, giving the developer all the APIs necessary for them to expand and build applications that they were never seen before on the automobile industry. I mean, data gaming, the revolution data gaming is mind-blowing. $80 billion in 2012, $80 billion expected globally in 2012 for video games, $20 billion for computer games, $2 billion for social gaming, right? It is an industry bigger than the music industry globally and tied with the film industry. And who are the ones making this possible? Once again, a development community on the gaming industry. The challenges of gaming industry are fascinating, and because now they are bringing big data analytics, because they do have a lot of big data. They're bringing big data analytics to the behavior and the patterns of their players, right? The efforts, the projects going on in this are quite challenging. Supply chain, I already touched in how we could actually do early warning in supply chain, being able to identify your product in the supply chain because all the information is there and we can actually correlate it and get access to. It is already 60 years from the discovery of the structure of the DNA. I mean, this year is also the anniversary of the 10th year anniversary of the Genome Project, I believe. And personalized healthcare. Personalized care is everything about being able to do treatment or some type of treatment for patients in order to, by leveraging their information, their genetic information, their genome information, the biological information that hospitals and doctors have. Being able to, to give to developers, for developers to come up with the necessary tools for new analytic treatment, prevention of illnesses, and so forth. From the SAP perspective and our in-memory computing, we have invested quite a bit on healthcare. Smart grids, I already told you a number of cases. We should think that a smart grid does not only tie to utilities. In telecommunication, you have the smart meters. In smart meters. And telecommunications, you also have a smart billing, being able to bill you depending on how much usage you have. This is something that is an area that I've seen in Asia Pacific. But much more than that, right? If you think about big data not necessarily gives you the best answers, but actually creates more problems for you in regards, because you have to analyze that data. When you link big data to semantics and artificial intelligence, similar to what, let's say, IBM has done with Watson, right? You could actually potentially send a question to that vast amounts of data, and for that software to give you the right answer, depending on the scenario. This is what we are seeing in public safety, being able to handle all, from the time that the incident occurs, being able to correlate that information and alert a command control center or emergency respondents, right? In a number of areas, developers are in the middle of it. Now, how do we actually take advantage of being developers and become the key makers that, as that quote referred? To conclude on my presentation, I would like to highlight 3 different areas. Being able to have the right platform, the right computer platform, and this is where here I suggest to you areas where you should pay close attention. Being able to have the right platform, a solution on the cloud, a high-performance solution on the cloud that will give you the features and capabilities needed in order to handle big data and the real-time aspect. It is clear that the user expectations and technology capabilities must be met. Our customers are asking for it. They're telling us that it should always be connected, it should run in all devices, you should take advantage of the social experience. It should be in real time. I want a slice and dice, I want analytics from that point on, right? And the technology capabilities must match to it. But when you think of what are the expectations, when you think that, okay, available all the time and in all devices, that's what mobility and cloud gives me. Real-time in-memory computing. And the more that companies start thinking of what really entails in order to suffice the user expectations, the bigger the challenge comes, and the taller is just too big, right? It is too uneconomical to have it in one house. So what do we do, right? This is where platform as a service, addresses many of these issues. In a subscription basis, you could actually have a platform that has all the services needed in order to build the applications that deal with these vast amounts of information. A platform that, by you using it, will take advantage not only of the portal services that it might have, take advantages of the dashboard analytics, all the analytic models that are already part of it, being able to leverage the collaboration, being able to have all the governance, such as like compliance and so forth. But it is clear that those solutions, those services alone, do not solve the problem of real-time and big data, especially knowing that you have all types of information, variety of data. The secret sauce in here is in-memory computing. And it is no secret, especially if you've been in the SAP world, that SAP HANA is our in-memory cloud solution, in-memory computing solution. Now, from day one, we have built this solution based on the technology that relies on distributed computing, being able to leverage the multi-core CPUs, many CPUs running in one chip, being able for processors to talk to each other in such a fast way by leveraging terabytes of information. Some of the scenarios that we're dealing with is like an in-memory solution with 4 terabytes, everything on in-memory. When you think of of an in-memory database, such as like the ones SAP has, SAP HANA, from the first point that you interact with this database, everything is loaded in columns and rows, depending how you develop the application. But everything is in memory. We take advantage of parallel processing because of the column storage. Column storage facilitates for us to use a number of compression techniques. that were not possible in relational databases. Being able to take advantage of the multi-core CPUs, being able to allocate core or processors to columns in parallel, hundreds of processors allocated to different parts of the application in order to have the high-performing expectations that customers want. Not only being able to allocate high-performing CPUs to columns, but in an in-memory database, you can actually have one column and assign processor power to different sections of that column. The first place where big data actually knocked the door in SAP was actually certainly our data warehousing, right? This is where companies would actually store everything on a data warehouse solution, vast amounts of information, and we would actually have to slice and dice and sometimes give them batch queries of 30-minute process it would take for you to actually have the final report, sometimes days, depending on how much those data warehouse solutions had. But what we did, we actually started using materialized aggregates, right, in order to aggregate the information, buffering techniques, indexing techniques. It gave us a tenfold in millisecond. We could actually have access to scan data, gigabytes of information in millisecond. But when you are dealing with the amounts of information that I just made reference of, coming from a number of industries, that is just not enough. And in-memory computing, because everything is in-memory, actually addresses and solves that. Actually, with our in-memory solution, you don't have the need even to use materialized aggregates. You don't have the need to aggregate all that information. That happens on the fly because of the parallel processing, because of the column storage, because of the compression algorithms, and so forth. But certainly, the in-memory computing solution tied to a high computing distributed system environment is not enough, right? When you are building the next generation of business solutions in the future, you must have the data services, the services that come with it. Meaning that you need a place where to display them. You need a portal. You need the services for analytical viewing, the governance aspect of it in order for you to manage that information. So when you look into platform as a service, what you need to pay close attention, and this is a suggestion that I give to you, is it must handle big data. Because it doesn't matter how many fancy UI services has or how much governance it has. Without handling the big data, you will come up with problems. Finally, an ecosystem. An end-to-end user experience. It is expected from the developer's perspective that we will actually use some of the design principles, right? This new way of thinking of being able to incorporate into the tooling, design thinking, this new way of looking at how to build applications that are more related to the human experience. You use your own tools. We are now locked into a language. Being able to use the programming tools that you understand, that you are familiar with, without being logged into a specific language. That's what you should look into a platform. Being able to end this whole traditional way of batch processing, this way of being able to, before you actually see the end result of what you've developed, you have to batch it and test it and rebuild it. Management certainly quite important. Being able to have IT governance not only for the developer, but for the enterprise that pays close attention to security. This is a big one, especially in the enterprise, as well as being compliant to standards. Now, one of the things that you might not be familiar, I certainly was not familiar when my times of developer, is that the possibility of you having the power of whatever you do, gaming, social networking, big data, real time, whatever those scenarios you're dealing with right now, having the power of leveraging an ecosystem for you to collaborate on the code, for you to making those applications available for mass adoption, for that matter, and for those applications to always be connected. Finally, the marketplace aspect. And to finalize, I would like to say is that when you look into a platform, you should pay close attention that whatever you deploy out there, it should be viewed by many. It should have the potential of mass adoption, right? Being able to collaborate not only as in a community of developers by being able to expose the applications that you build to everyone. Be able to monetize that code. Depending the platforms that you're looking, you should be able to see, does it actually allow me to monetize on the libraries, code snippets, or packages that I'm building? Can I monetize on this work that I am doing? Can I monetize on the, and can I actually address big data solutions and so forth of applications? Can I actually enhance this platform that I'm dealing with by providing additional services? Maybe build an application that is integrated with some other cloud applications. Being able even to sell content. We have big industry, we have developers, a community that is actually providing data mappings for industries, that is actually providing analytical models and making those available also for monetization. So as the end, I would like to highlight that from the SAP perspective, we have the SAP HANA Cloud Platform, a place where developers can actually not only innovate, build, but also extend their applications that address all the challenges that companies are currently facing today in real-time, big data, and so forth. This is possible through the innovation that we have done on in-memory computing, leveraging high distributed computing systems, the services that we are putting on top in order for that data to be visible, analytical, mobile, portal, and so forth, and making, at the end of the day, allowing the developer to show their work and to a community that we either collaborate or a community that actually will consume these applications. So I'll invite all of you to go to saphana.com. That will kind of like open the doors for you to some of the concepts that I have explained in this presentation, to some of the technology that I've explained in this presentation. And I know I'm running out of time, so with that, I thank you for your time. Yep.